The pen felt heavier than it should have, like it had absorbed the weight of the last 12 years of my life. I remember thinking that was ridiculous. Pens don't carry memories, but there I was, billionaire CEO of a logistics empire, staring at a signature line as if it were cliff edge. Outside the cafe's glass wall, rain slid down the windows in slow, resigned streaks. Inside, everything smelled like roasted coffee beans and burnt sugar. Neutral ground, my lawyer had said. Quiet, discreet, final. I had chosen the corner table because it gave me control. I could see the door, the counter, the reflection of myself in the dark glass. A man in his early 40s, tailored charcoal suit, silver watch, calm posture. A man who had learned to look unbothered while entire markets shook under his decisions. A man about to end a marriage with a signature. The papers were spread neatly between me and my attorney. My wife wasn't there. She didn't need to be. The terms were settled, assets divided, statements prepared. She had asked for speed. I had agreed. Clean cuts bleed less, or so I told myself. Whenever you're ready, my lawyer said softly, pushing the folder an inch closer. That's when the waitress appeared. She couldn't have been more than 25. Brown hair pulled back into a practical ponytail, apron tied a little too tight at the waist, a faint smudge of espresso foam on her sleeve. She carried a tray with 2 coffees I hadn't ordered yet. Her steps were careful, almost hesitant, like she was approaching a sleeping animal. "Excuse me," she said, setting the cups down. Her voice was steady, but her eyes weren't. They kept flicking to the papers, then to my face, then away again. "I didn't order," I started. "On the house," she interrupted, then seemed to realize she had interrupted me and flushed. The manager said, "It's a rough day outside." I nodded, distracted, already reaching for the pen again. She didn't move. My lawyer cleared his throat. "Sir, we really should." "Please," the waitress said suddenly, and that word, "please," cut through the quiet like a dropped plate. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "I know this isn't my place. I know I could get fired. But before you sign, there's something you should know about your wife." Time slowed. I felt irritation flare, sharp and reflexive. People try to get close to me all the time, employees, strangers, opportunists with secrets to sell. This had the familiar shape of a setup. My lawyer stood. "Miss, this is a private matter." She ignored him and looked only at me. Not with greed, not with excitement, with urgency, with something like fear. "I serve her here," she whispered. 3 nights ago. She didn't know who I was. She didn't know I'd recognize her. I felt my jaw tighten. "You have 30 seconds, I said, more out of curiosity than belief. "Then you walk away." She swallowed and leaned in just enough that only I could hear. "She said she loved you," the waitress whispered. "She said she was signing the divorce because she thought you already stopped loving her. She said she made a mistake listening to people who don't know you. And she cried into a cold cup of coffee for 20 minutes because she didn't know how to fix it." The pen slipped from my fingers and rolled across the table. The cafe noise rushed back in. Cups clinking, the hiss of the espresso machine, the low hum of conversation, but inside my head there was only silence. A wide, stunned silence where certainty had been seconds ago. "That's not possible," my lawyer said quickly. "My client's wife has legal representation. Any statements?" "She didn't say it to a lawyer," the waitress replied. "She said it to me because I asked if she wanted a refill, and she laughed and said she didn't deserve one." I stared at the papers, the neat paragraphs, the signatures already in place except mine. I thought of my wife, of Elena, standing at the kitchen island months ago, arms crossed, asking me why I never talked anymore. I had answered with numbers and schedules. I had answered with distance. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. The waitress exhaled, like she'd been holding her breath for days. "Because my parents signed papers like those," she said, nodding at the folder. And I watched them realize too late that no one had lied. They had just stopped listening. I promised myself I'd never stay quiet if I saw it happening again. My lawyer leaned down. "Sir, with respect, this is emotional interference. We can't." I raised a hand. He stopped. I looked at the signature line again. It seemed farther away now, like it belonged to someone else. Did she say anything else? I asked. The waitress nodded. She said, if he asked me to try one more time, I would, even if it scared me. That was the sentence that broke me. Because pride had kept me from asking. Because silence had been easier than vulnerability. Because I had convinced myself that love ended loudly, when in truth, it often ends quietly, through misunderstandings no one bothers to correct. I pushed the papers away. My lawyer straightened. Sir, I'm not signing today, I said. The waitress stepped back, relief washing over her face so visibly it hurt to look at. She nodded once, then turned and walked away, shoulders lighter than when she'd arrived. I didn't finish the coffee. I didn't say another word. I stood, buttoned my coat, and walked out into the rain. The drive felt endless. Red lights blurred into streaks. My phone sat on the passenger seat, heavier than any contract. I hadn't called Elena in weeks. We communicated through attorneys now, like strangers negotiating borders. I pulled over before I lost my nerve. When she answered, there was a pause, long enough for me to imagine her surprise, her guarded hope. Elena, I said. My voice cracked on her name. I didn't sign. Silence. Then a shaky breath. Why? Because I think we made decisions based on fear, I said. And because I should have asked you something a long time ago. I drove to our old house. Not the penthouse downtown, not the corporate apartment. Our house. The one with the crooked porch step and the lemon tree she loved. The lights were on when I arrived. She stood in the doorway when I knocked. Smaller than I remembered. Stronger, too. We didn't hug at first. We just looked at each other, years of unspoken words pressing in. I heard something today, I said. About you. About us. Her eyes widened, then softened. From a café, she whispered. I told a stranger because I couldn't tell you. I should have been there, I said. I should have listened. We talked until the rain stopped. We talked about assumptions, about pride, about how loneliness can exist even in luxury. We didn't fix everything that night, but we chose to stay in the room, to keep talking, to try. Weeks later, the papers sat and signed in a drawer. Sometimes I go back to that cafe. I always leave a generous tip. The waitress knows why. She doesn't need to ask. Because a single whisper, spoken at the right moment, saved a marriage that silence was about to destroy. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone you haven't listened to enough or words you've been afraid to say, don't let silence decide your ending. Share this story, reflect on it, and choose conversation before it's too late.